Hi there, Dance Studio owner. It's Clint here, founder of the Dance Studio Owners Association. Welcome to 2020. Great to have you with us. And over the next 6 weeks, I'm bringing you a brand new series where I've actually been interviewed by the incredible Lauren Ritchie from the Dance Podcast. Now, in these 6 episodes, we're going to talk about everything from feeling relevant now in the fast-moving pace with technology, how to be an authentic leader, what happens when you feel complacent in your business and you're kind of just tracking along and you kind of don't want anything else, how to get that motivation and edge. We're going to talk about disrupting the norm and how do you stand out from all of the other dance studios that are in your local area. We talk about expectations of yourself, of your team members, how to get the most out of your team, and also how to not be fearful of other people's opinions and to make sure that you are running your dance studio and nobody else is. It's an incredible, wide-ranging conversation Lauren and I are having over these next 6 weeks, and I am so excited to share it with you. Before we get into it, we have also opened the doors to our Inner Circle program where my team and I work closely with a group of studio owners. If you want more details on that program, go to dsoa.com/inner circle. Now let's get on with the show.
So as always, at the end of the episodes, I love to debrief. And in season 4, it has been with our dear friend, Clint, who most of you now probably know and are familiar with because of his wealth of knowledge that he shares with us. Having worked with thousands of dance studio owners, teachers, creatives, Clint and I come from the same tribe. We listen to the same people. We love on the same things. And Clint, we are so grateful to have you back.
Yeah, thanks, Lauren. I'm loving these conversations.
All right. So we touch on this idea of burnout. And I think that it is a true story for so many creatives. A true story for so many of us who are, committed to that freedom that we get to choose in this lifestyle. And yet it can very quickly become hustle, a never ending to-do list. And I really am just like reflecting on my life right now of balancing that or getting to the point where I'm completely burnt out and then going, oh, I went too far. like I'm actually pretty good at noticing the red flags or the feelings, but sometimes just life gets really busy or the nature and the cycle of our creative workflow or project-based type work. This happens all the time. You go from competition season to registration season to new season. And the same thing happens in school, even if you're in university, there's just this cycle of intensity. So how do you combat burnout? Because I feel like you're very conscious of this. And you also work so closely with so many people who have passion-driven businesses. They open up the business because they love what they do. And I think so many of us, we choose this profession because we love it so much. But it can also take or deplete very quickly.
Totally. I think the first thing is you've got to be able to map out and know the seasons that you are going to go through in a year. You tend to know, okay, January is really busy, February is okay, March is super busy, recital is in May, June, we're super busy then. Summer, so we have seasons. And so we generally know, if we've been in this more than a year, we generally know how we feel during the season. And so when you map out your year, the first thing that you've got to notice is, okay, this is crazy season. This is when Clint goes crazy. Mm-hmm. For 6 weeks, I am nonstop, working 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day. And so during that season, you have to ask yourself, what am I doing during this time so that I do stay sane, so I don't lose my mind, so I don't start lashing out at people, my partner, the parents at the studio, the teachers. How can I stay composed? And also during these busy seasons are generally where we should be feeling the most amount of joy. But often it doesn't happen that way. So we need to make sure that we have some routines, maybe some self-care routines put in there, like a massage, like some people it's talking to a life coach or going to therapy. I mean, therapy can be amazing. What can you do during this time so that you are stepping out of the house every day and being the best version of you? Because actually when we need to be our best version is when we are going through a crazy season. We can't, not when we've got nothing to do, and I find that, right? We have nothing to do. I have nothing to do now. So now I'm going to the gym. Now I'm getting my hair cut. Now, no. I mean, yes, continue doing that in your down season, but during your busy season is where you should have the most amount of focus on self-care.
I love that.
That's really important. I also think burnout is tricky because if you're similar to me, which I'm sure a lot of you are, I actually thrive in a lot of activity.
Totally.
I'm like in a million places, and then I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm so busy, but I'm like, but I love it, so we kind of have these moments, and this is totally me. And I'll say, I've got so much going on at the moment. I don't ever use the word burnout because I don't like it. But we can all kind of identify with it. And then I'll go to the complete other end of the spectrum where I'm like, okay, so what am I going to do now? Like I came out of this busy time and your fingers are like twitching and you've got this slight like, okay, I need to get moving again. Then we get moving again. Then we go out into, burnout season again. Yeah. And so I think what just has to be consistent, that is kind of our lives as creatives, studio owners, choreographers, teachers. But if the consistent piece and the foundation piece is always like the self-care pillar first, you're going to be pretty good. Like you'll be pretty good. If that is consistent, you can layer some chaos, some problems, some inconveniences on top of that. And you should be able to stay pretty even. That would be my advice from these. I started my dance studio when I was 16, and so I've been running businesses now for 18 years. And that is one of the lessons that I learned probably about 7 years ago with a specific mentor who noticed that I had these seasons and I was crazy Clint, and then I'd kind of I'd like go on this down, right? Like I'd have this massive season and be like teaching and choreographing, and then I'd have like nothing to do, and I used to like fall into like depression of like, there's nothing to do now, and I used to be busy again. And so she was like, hey, we need to introduce a level of self-care. Consistent. Right. That doesn't just happen when you've got nothing to do, or doesn't just happen when you've got a lot to do. It's like always happening. It's a common thread in every day.
I noticed that for the past couple of years, and I'm thankful for therapy and reflections and journals, but I noticed around sort of the like March, April time, I started, and this is my own neuroses and I'm happy to share it, but like I started to think about, oh my goodness, summer's coming, summer body, beach body, fancy dresses, weddings, events. And I started getting this like, I should start watching what I eat, or like I need to really rein it in. And then all of a sudden I'm at competition for 14 hours and not living the best, most planned life. And noticing that I've done that a couple of years, I was like, whoa. Okay. So meal prepping has to be more of a thing. Also grace and compassion for myself in those moments of like learning, oh, this is a cycle. Oh yeah. Like rather than judging myself super harshly, which tends to be like a knee-jerk reaction. We all have our cycles. It's whether you can identify them and then have that support to shift and change. And I mean, that's what you do essentially. Like you support the shifts, at least from what I'm really, I think that you can talk about like getting more, people through the door. But really, that's like only part of what you do. I really feel like you support the shifts in mentality and perspective, the shifts in processes, and just even that personal identity and transformation.
Yeah. I mean, that's the stuff that builds a sustainable business. Totally. Yes, I can teach you how to get, 100 new students through the door in the next 3 months, right? That's easy.
Yeah.
But the stuff that really matters is first and foremost our mindset, protecting it, growing it,
taking care of it.
We do. I always say, like, we teach how to grow your business, how to get you new students, how to, build up the profitability, how to keep your students. And I smuggle in personal development.
Totally.
I smuggle it in because it's not it for us to say, shift your mindset, be stronger. It's not really attractive from a marketing perspective, right? But we do work a lot on that, because the thing is I find that so many people get blocked around actually executing what we're teaching because of maybe their belief system that they've been given or that they've adopted. And so, we have a mindset coach inside of the inner circle. I mean, we work on these things as well, which contributes to our members getting great results financially, getting back their time. But it also means that they're going to be able to sustain the growth as well, rather than have this big explosion of growth, which I've seen burn out, close down their studio because they're like, I don't know, I can't handle this anymore.
Yeah, this isn't fun. Yeah, I've given everything. Oh, so good. Okay, so Mark talks about auditions and hiring and really some of the business perspective behind our industry and what we need to know as dancers and creatives, and essentially we are all entrepreneurs. And something that I have a little bit of experience, but it's actually funny how I have this experience through hiring people for projects, hiring people for events, hiring talent. I actually had to learn all about corporate hiring through Lululemon, which was a great training ground because it's such a large corporation. It's, values driven, all of that good stuff. And then I've also had to do the hiring for summer intensives and hiring faculty and then hiring dancers as talent at local events and all of that stuff. So hiring tends to be a part of our world. Even if you're not a business owner, quite often you're bringing together community if you're a community influencer or creative. So we have Clint Salter again weighing in because of his Dance Studio Owners Association and the amount of work that he has with hiring, maybe the growth side, firing, and really, but also attracting the right kind of people you want to work with. And that's so important, right? When you are in an audition, when you are in an audition room, it's not just your talent. It's, do you give good energy? Are you somebody that a choreographer wants to work with? When you're a studio owner, it's, are you going to jump on board with the philosophy and the direction that this bus is headed in growth and development? So Clint, welcome back for our little closing and outro. I would love to know, because this is a real part on both sides of the person hiring and also the person wanting to be hired. So what kind of conversations do you have with the teachers in your organization and association? And the inner circle and all of those elements? Tell us about hiring from your perspective.
Yeah, look, hiring is, as a studio owner, is, I believe, one of the most challenging parts of your job, because you start, you're a dance teacher, then you're a studio owner, and you have a dream. And to make that dream actually come alive, you're going to need people to help you, right? I see a lot of studio owners who think they can do it all themselves. That's when we get to burnout, which we talked about previously. And, the thing is, when it comes to hiring, the first thing you need to know are, what are your core values? So many people go into hiring and they don't know what the values are of their studio or their personal values, right? And these are really important. I think it is important because it helps us navigate life. It helps us say yes to things. It helps us say no to things. It helps us pick a life partner. All of these valuable things in life, our compass should be our core values. And so I always suggest to jump onto Google, type in core values test, a whole bunch of them will come up, do it, and come up with a handful of values that speak to you and give them your own definition. That's the first exercise. You need to do that before you get hired or you go hire someone, because knowing what you stand for is really important. I was actually thinking about this on a recent trip. And I was seeing some stuff kind of online, and people were like, be yourself, be who you are. And I was like, I think before you tell people to be themselves and be who you are, we need to help people find out what their core values are. Because I think people's be yourself, be who you are, be authentic are actually just mirrors of other people or their representations of what they think the world wants them to be. And I think that is so dangerous. And so I love core values. I come back to them every single time I'm making a decision, and especially around hiring, because when you put out a hiring advert and you're going to bring someone into your organization, into your studio, or a dancer in for a job if you're a choreographer, speaking to your core values is one of the best things that you can do to bring in the right person first. So you're not getting 300 applicants from people that are not going to be the right fit. You might get 50 applicants, right? But they're going to be people that are aligned to what you believe in. And that's half of the battle right there, is getting people who are aligned and believe in what you believe in. Same advice, please, if you want to find a partner in life.
Yeah. Can I share a little moment?
Please, yeah.
So part of my mental skills training for dancers book that I am in the middle of creating, I make all the dancers identify their values, even at the high school level. And even if they're not, because they get to the point where they circle all of them, right? And so you really do have to coach them into those fundamental, like foundational ones. But what I also appreciated as a teacher and coach is that I had, for example, a student say one of her biggest, strongest, most like fundamental values is independence. And so we had a conversation around, what does that look like for you? What does that mean for you? How does that show up for you? And what I actually realized is that we now work better together when I give her that space and she feels that sense of independence. And we can always check back in and come back in, and they're still coaching. It's just, rather than me, I just recognize that she needs that. And so as you're hiring people, to be able to say yours, and then the people who want the job, like, you also have to know that. And it transforms when two leaders can speak to their values. Boom. And I'm sure you experience that all the time.
Oh yeah, completely. So, that's kind of the first thing that you've got to look at. A mistake I see with studio owners or choreographers that are hiring is that they hire another version of them. They hire someone that they're like, yeah, we could be friends. You don't go find your friends outside of your studio. And I know that this can be really hard to hear because you're spending so much time at the studio, but cultivating friendships outside of your staff are really important, because at the end of the day, you are the boss. You are the boss. And you need to hire not only for core values, but you need to hire for those gaps, those blind spots. There's nothing worse. And I did this very early on when I was starting to hire a team. I just hired a bunch of yes people that said yes to everything that I said, that I asked for. And what I realized one day, I was like, oh my goodness. I was like, yeah, my team are amazing. They say yes, they do everything. And one of my friends was like, that actually isn't a really good thing. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, we don't fight, we don't get into arguments. And they're like, no, Clint, like that's not what you want as a business owner. You want people to come in and challenge you and bring ideas and question why you do things to make the business better. And I was like, oh, right. I just been hiring people that I like to hang out with and chat to that thought exactly the same way I did.
Yeah.
And when I changed that and brought in people that filled the gaps, that did challenge, that did push back, that did come to me with better ways of doing things, we started to grow our business. It was definitely a transition for me because I wasn't used to, you could call it conflict, but the conflict that was going on. And then I got to a point where it's like, oh my goodness, I just want to hire all people like this. Like, this is so amazing. And then have your friendships outside, outside of the studio. As a choreographer, as a teacher, I know it's hard because you probably work and play with the same group of people, but I want to encourage you to try and seek out, whether it's through another hobby or through a social group or whatever it might be, but try and find other people that you can build deep friendship with, that aren't people that you necessarily are hiring. And I just want to say, when you bring these people on, one thing I say often is that, you're hiring someone and you expect them to be able to do the job like within a week, right? You're like, I'm hiring someone, great. Here you go, off you go, good luck. I want to let you know that it's depending on the role, but my time frame is about 6 months to get someone into a place where they're good, just good, right? And then as you move forward and spend time with them and mentor them and coach them and communicate with them, they're going to get more comfortable. They're going to get better. And they're going to be more valuable to the organization. So spending time with them, don't think they're going to do everything in the first week. And they are also not a mind reader. So you've got to be able to communicate.
This might be a bit of a tangent.
Yeah.
But I am curious because of the stats around the younger generation. I don't even know if we can call them millennials anymore, but we'll just, the younger generation, they don't stay as long in places.
No.
I mean, it's just the reality. And so what about somebody who's sitting here going, oh my goodness, I have to coach them for 6 months or a year, and then they leave a year after that?
And then there's that great saying of, what if you don't coach them and they stay?
Oh.
So I always think of that. I always think about, yes, it's an investment of time and energy, and yes, they potentially could leave. But what if I just threw them in, didn't coach them, didn't mentor them, and they stayed? Like, what is that doing to my organization? What is that doing to the children whose classes, this person's teaching the class? What is it doing to these children? And generally we find there's, huge churn rate. Kids are leaving, they're not retaining. And so, yeah, I like to not focus on that. And I think as a leader, we can put this kind of label on millennials don't stay, they're changing every 2 seconds. I think, though, if we can connect with this generation in a way that they want, which is they want to be a part of something that's bigger than them, so sharing your why and mission with your millennials and younger team members are really important. Bringing your teachers who are millennials into things like your marketing meetings or promotions meetings, really important as well. They want education, they want knowledge, they want a seat at the table. So give them a seat. They have so much knowledge that is just from a different planet than ours. Or yours if you're older than us. And so utilize that, and instead of saying, oh, the millennials, they're lazy or they change every 2 seconds or all of this. I mean, every generation has their thing that the generation before said about them. Yeah. I'm sure we all remember our parents going, when I was your age, and I remember saying, I am never going to say that. That's the most annoying thing that a parent can say to you. And I say it now,
Oh, there's a Socrates quote that when you read it, I used to have a boss who would read it without saying who the quote was from. And it's like, kids of this generation essentially are lazy, or they aren't as committed, or they don't blah, blah. And then it's like Socrates. So it's like, this has been going on for much longer than any of us.
Yeah. Such a long time. But I think if you always come from a place of mentorship, and invested in the whole person. I went to a Disney conference last year, and they said, one of their big philosophies that they're working on is mentoring the whole person, the 360 of the person, not the 5 hours that they come in to teach at the studio. Yeah. And so I think that level of investment now is really needed. And then you're going to see that filter down into your dancers, the people you're, setting a piece on, your office team, anyone in any situation, whether you're a studio owner, a choreographer, a dance teacher, a creative. I think these things are going to serve you as the hirer, but also as the employee or the talent.
Jen and Kyla are such an amazing team. I mean, you can feel their energy. They are loving what they do, loving each other's company, the things that you really hope a partnership would be based in, just genuine love. And something that I've actually talked about before is this idea of partnerships, because I have now been a part of partnerships in the business world, that's the business creative world, collaboration world. And I've also just seen many in action. And so I actually had connected with Clint Salter. This would have probably been at least a year and a half ago, speaking about partnerships and those realities, because he works with thousands of dance studio owners who quite often are partners or in partnership with their faculty who is helping to run their business. And I find them such a fascinating and complicated dynamic of what we do. And so I'm going to introduce Clint again. Hello, Clint. Thank you for coming and sharing all your wisdom.
Hello. Yeah, this is an interesting one. I love it.
It is. And I heard somebody interviewed recently about the food system in the United States. And she kept using the word complicated. And I was like, oh, that's a really interesting word, because there actually wasn't judgment around it. It was just acknowledging that a lot of things are happening. And I thought, when I was, writing notes for partnerships, I went, complicated, because us as humans, as individuals, can be complicated. And then you put them together, and then you put money on it, and then you put deadlines on it, and oh my goodness. So what is it that you see in the Dance Studio Owners Association in regards to partnerships, and like what works and what doesn't?
Yeah, this is such an interesting conversation. And I was in a partnership when I had my dance studio. So 5 years in partnership, I sold my half of the studio to Kelly Lee after I decided to leave. And so I have experience in partnership. And now in the association, we have a lot of members in the inner circle, a lot of members who come to us in partnership, sisters, best friends, husband and wives, you name it. We have all the combinations of partnerships that exist. The mistakes I'm going to start with that people make around partnerships is they go in too quickly, right? They're best friends, their brother and sister, their family, and they're like, well, we both love teaching dance. We've been doing it all our lives, and why don't we start a company together? Or why don't we put a piece together or a show together? Or why don't we open a dance studio together? And it's often done very quickly without really sitting down and firstly working out the nuts and the bolts of the partnership. And the nuts and the bolts really quite simply is 2 pieces of paper. What do you want to do? What do I want to do? And you each write that down. Well, I love doing this. We do occasionally have the column down the middle, and we have, this is the stuff I love doing. This is the stuff I don't want to touch. Mm-hmm. This is the stuff I hate doing. Those lists are really a great foundation of putting some roles together of what they particularly might look like in a partnership. Mm-hmm. So you have an idea. If you come out of that and you've both got exactly the same lists, generally that's not going to be a good situation.
I have been in that.
We all have. Look, I think we all have in one way or another. And so what we're looking for is complementary skills, first and foremost. In a dance studio, I've seen it where one of them will be more of the artistic director and look after the programming and the curriculum and potentially the teachers and the costuming, maybe, like that really creative piece. And then the other person's in charge of money, staffing, HR, marketing, operations, right? That's in a dance studio world, those partnerships can work. I won't say they always work, because then we have to layer on this lovely thing called personality. And so, but that's the first foundation that you've got to get, right? Where are the skill sets? Where do people want to work? What lanes do people want to work in? And can our lanes sit side by side? Mm-hmm. There will naturally be a small, if you think of the Olympic rings, there's some overlap with the rings, right? So there's occasionally going to be a little bit of overlap. And in those instances, you kind of have to have the boss of that area. Like, who gets final say on that? Because it's never, we love to think everything's 50-50, but that doesn't exist. So someone has to have the veto power of like, well, I make the decision around this. I love your input, but like, I'm the boss of this. And this is what I think. Yeah. And so having that together is really important. Definitely a partnership agreement. You know, it's really nice to be like, we're best friends, like we love each other for life. And like you go into this partnership and then it might not work out. And so having a very clear agreement that includes your roles, that includes what happens when there's a disagreement, whether it's go to mediation, and you like might be thinking, oh my goodness, mediation. Guys, you've got to think about these things. Right? You have to think about these things before you go into it. Like I said, whether it's a company piece that you're working on together, or putting a show together, or joining forces in a creative endeavor or a business like a dance studio, it's really important. And then to keep, it's like any good relationship, to keep it going, you need to practice continual, courageous communication, right? My 3 C's that I love. I use this in all of my relationships. Some relationships it's harder to use than others, but especially in a business, especially in any type of partnership, is you've got to provide and it's got to be known that you have a very safe space for each other, where you can have these conversations, where there is limited judgment. I'm not going to say zero judgment, because naturally we judge, but there's limited judgment. And it's a place where someone can be heard and you can listen. Really, really important. And I see the people that practice this specifically have just the most beautiful and a really strong partnership.
Yeah. I'm going to share just a personal story that I think ties right into this. Is I had a girlfriend and we actually ran a dance intensive together, and that was sort of the realization, oh, we want to do the same things. Okay. And so we kind of went through that journey and decided that was going to come to an end. And yet she's still one of my near and dear friends. And recently we actually had a really, what I would call like a difficult conversation, in that it could be emotionally driven. It could be very reactionary. There was hurt feelings and like that kind of stuff. But what the coolest thing is that she's done so much work on herself, her triggers, her insecurities, her wounds, all, her perspective. And I've done the same. And here we are having what could be a very difficult conversation. And it is in a space of love and calmness and recognizing who we are as each other, but also who the other person is. And at one moment we go, I'm really proud of us. Like, this is a big deal. We are talking. And not reacting. And so when I hear you speak, I'm like, and we go back to what you and I talked about earlier of what are you committed to your personal growth, your values? Are you rooted and clear on what your reactions or your mirrors are becoming? And you do so much of this work in DSOA.
Yeah, we, unintentionally, we do a lot of this, work because it is so important. And often this approach to being a business owner and really just a strong, resilient human being, this stuff is really important. And it's, like you said, you had a tough conversation. Difficult conversations are 100% part of life, and you're going to have a ton more of them if you run a business or you're pioneering a new show or a new piece. And I've seen people, I've seen some creatives, choreographers who I've worked with in the past deliver their message in not a great way to their cast, to their talent. And I've seen other choreographers who are like authors, delivering their message and what they want with kindness and compassion, but also conviction. And because they have expectation and there's a standard that needs to be followed. And so there's definitely different ways that you can go about communicating how you feel. I love that story that you just shared. And I think it's important that we put that, as hard as it is, and guys, it never gets easier. People are like, when does it get easier? I'm like, it doesn't, but you get better, right? It doesn't get easier, but you get so much better.
Yeah.
So you get like a little less butterflies and you feel a little less sick, but you still feel sick. But it's so powerful, and that allows us to connect in such a deeper way, right? Mm-hmm. That I'm sure that you've got a deeper connection, a deeper level of trust, probably in this friendship now.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
It's the same in our businesses. It's the same in our partnerships. Yeah. It's the same when we're working with people. But it is a special type of person that you can have this conversation with.
Yep. And I know both you and I are such big Brene friends, such big Brene fans.
Yeah,
there it is.
Tongue twister.
And what I say, I think almost every day now, clear is kind. The more clear we can be in our words and our communication, the more clear in expectations. Like, that's the kindest thing you can do to your partner.
Right, exactly. And I think Brene and Oprah, you've probably watched the interview they did around like being brave. And Oprah said, you are always going to disappoint someone. You know, like, and I always think that when I have to have a conversation or I have to make a tough decision, I'm like, you know, this is always going to disappoint somebody, you know? And so that coming back to like, what is your truth and speaking it, so crucial.
Okay, guys. So we all know that as Colette was speaking, I expressed I was getting anxiety because there is so much work that happens so quickly. And then it became this process of what is urgent versus what is important. And it really struck with me because it is something that I remember learning back in university, actually, in one of my, I think it was like organizational management courses. And there's this need now that I actually train the dancers with time management about urgent versus important. And literally she got that call from Kris Jenner saying, I'm having a birthday party. I need 20 dancers or whatever the number was. And I'm like, okay, well, you're not going to hang up on Kris Jenner. So let's make things happen. And urgent versus important tends to be a daily topic of conversation. And I know for a fact, and I witness it, that it happens in dance studios all the time, whether it's the teachers or the directors or just creatives trying to balance the business side. And so Clint Salter is back to speak with us about urgent versus important. Hi, Clint.
Yay. Hi. I love this topic because often everything seems urgent in the moment. Right.
Totally.
And you know, breath is so powerful, especially in these moments, because something happens, and I see this a lot with our studio owners, and you drop everything else. You're working on something, right? You drop everything else and you move over, you scurry over to the left and you fix that. Then you come back to the thing that you're working on. Then something else happens. You scurry over. And so one of my friends and mentors, Todd Herman, talks about context switching, right? Which is where we're continuously going from one thing to another, to another, to another. And we lose, I don't know the exact stats, but he talks about like we lose about 20% of productivity every time we're switching from one thing to another. We lose a lot. Right? We lose a lot. If you think about your day now, just talking about your to-do list, you're working on something, your phone rings or you get a text or, you know, your notifications blow up. Hopefully you all have notifications turned off on your phone. Me too.
Amen.
But yeah, we're distracted so frequently now. And so every time we are taken off task, we lose a percentage of our productivity. And so firstly, what is really important to understand around urgent versus important is when something comes up, we have to breathe. Is this really urgent? Because what I'm working on currently is probably very important. It could also be urgent. And so we have to kind of do this little like weigh up. And often the urgent is someone's bringing us something. It could be a panicked team member or a panicked dancer. Oh my goodness, this has happened. Something's blown up. Oh, no, 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 no. And like, then you're like, you start vibrating at that frequency. Oh my goodness, you know, and so you're both kind of hysterical. It's turned into this big urgent mess that you've got to deal with. Instead of taking a breath and thinking to yourself, is this urgent? Can someone else deal with this? Can I deal with this later? What is the impact of this going to be if I don't do it right now? Mm-hmm. And sometimes you do have to do something right now. Mm-hmm. Most of the time, though, probably not. Most of the time you can say, give some direction to the person, or if it's come to you directly, you can put it like it's the next thing that you might need to work on, or it's actually something that you can work on in a week's time. Mm-hmm. You need to have the power of having the bigger picture of like what needs to happen in the grand scheme of things. And then where does this apparently urgent thing fit? To be able to do this so really, really effectively, you need to make sure that if I'm talking to our studio owners, I'm always going to go back to what is in your 90-day plan. You know, part of the work that I teach is this 90-day plan system. And every 90 days, our studio owners in the inner circle focus on 3 big goals. That's all they're allowed. They're only allowed to focus on 3 goals. And so I'm continuously bringing them back to, well, is this aligned to your 90-day goals? Is this aligned to your 90-day goals? Because we actually can't work on 10 goals in 90 days. Mm-hmm. We probably achieve everything at like 11%, 11.5%, or whatever it is, right? Whereas if we have 3, we can like really get in there and make a difference and make it happen and achieve those goals. And so I'm always coming back to the 90-day plan. It is so important and impactful. And if you are doing, you know, you get 4 90-day plans in a year, which means that you've achieved probably 9 amazing goals. Oh no, 12, 10, 12, whatever, the math is 12, I think.
Yeah.
12 amazing goals in 12 months versus 1 or 2 because your list is too long and everything's treated as urgent.
Have you read Atomic Habits by James Clear?
2 weeks ago, I did the audio book on my walk.
Isn't it great?
Yeah, I mean, he's fantastic. You know, it's a message that we've heard through The Compound Effect, mm-hmm. Darren Hardy, Jeff Olson's Slight Edge, mm-hmm. which is, you know, creating habits, breaking them down. It's this essentially the small action you take every single day gets you to a level of success. Mm-hmm. Definitely. I love this reference point here because it's exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah. And that's what sort of popped up in my brain, because it's this piece of, if you're getting pulled away and you're constantly, I had a boss call it chasing ambulances, right? Like a dog just chasing every sort of sound that goes by. Yeah. And also knowing that the true growth of a business or the true measure or track to success is really in those small details, in those small moments. And so if you're, you know, if you're sort of getting swept up and caught away or by what you think in the moment is a big deal, you really have to do that reality check of, is it? And somebody could even write out the questions that you just listed in front of their desk, you know, right. Like, can somebody else do this? Is this, you know, something that can be done in an hour or next week or whatever?
Right. You know, is this gonna burn down the business in the next 10 minutes?
Totally.
Probably not. It's okay.
Totally.
Let's everyone have a calm down pill. Right?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So good. Okay. So I know that DSOA does a lot of this work, and that 90-day plan, you've spoken about it to me before. And I always, every time you speak about it, I go, yes. Like, do I have my 90-day plan? And because it can be done personally, not just from that business perspective.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, the 90-day plan is such a foundation. Mm-hmm. We've had people take it to their husbands, and, they have 90-day plans now up on their fridge in their house. And I love that. And it's so nice because 90 days is enough time for us to achieve, but it's also not too long. Like 12 months, that's why like New Year's resolutions rarely work, because like 12 months, I'll stop eating chocolate on like the 28th of December or something, like that kind of thing.
Yeah, totally.
But 90 days, like we can see it, we can feel it, we can hear it, we know it. And so it's so close, but far enough away that we can really, do some great work.
Okay. So Marissa spoke about diversifying your skills. And I mean, this is a woman who has done just that. And she wears many hats and can wear many hats, which is incredible. And I know, as I'm going to speak just from a very personal place where, okay, I have the dancer hat, and then I also have the podcaster hat and the student hat and the business owner hat of the teacher retreat, and just so many of these things. And then on top of that, in all of that, you got to wear your marketing hat or your content hat and your promotions hat. And so Clint Salter works with the amazing studio owners and teachers and creatives who are constantly in this space of wearing many hats. And I actually have a very specific question because of something that came up this week in one of these moments. So I wanted to welcome Clint.
Hi. I want to know what is the question? What is the question?
Okay, so I'm working with a studio owner and one of her admin girls who's worked at actually a couple different studios. And I was asking sort of just like, what's the difference between, or that she notices. And something that I recognized is that the one studio owner, I mean, if she's really overwhelmed, the last thing she wants to do is learn something new and have to add something new to her list. And I get it, because I even went through it with some email technology and somebody saying, well, this software is really easy and helpful. And I'm thinking, I don't have time to learn a new software. I just got to send the emails. Right. And I'm sure you hear this all the time, because as business owners, we're balancing. Yes, you can always hire somebody to help fill in that gap, but you might also want to be knowledgeable, or at least have a base understanding of some of these platforms and things. So coach us, Clint. How do we as creatives, as entrepreneurs, as business owners really diversify our skills, but also get clear on like, where's the best place to diversify?
Yeah, I think I love this question. I think the first thing you've got to identify is like, what is your zone of genius? First and foremost, what is the stuff that only you can do that nobody else can? What are those things? It might be choreographing. It could be running marketing. It could be creating teacher trainings. It could be building curriculum. What is like your special sauce? The thing that you would do every single day of the week and get paid no money and just like love it most of the time. What are those things? So let's list those out. Now, when it comes to building up our skill set in things that we don't have a prior knowledge of, for our studio owners, I always want them to have, you said like a base level, we call it like the foundation. I want you to have a foundation knowledge around how stuff works. I want you to be able to go into a MailChimp or an Active Campaign and know how to send an email. Because then when you delegate that or outsource it to someone else, you know what the end result should look like. Mm-hmm. This is the most important thing. Another great example is our studio owners don't really want to go through our Facebook ads training. They just want to give it away to someone else to do. But here's the thing, if you don't have that foundation knowledge and you don't go through our Facebook ads training of like the basics around an ad, how are you effectively going to be able to delegate and then manage that person to be able to get you the results? Throwing $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 a month at an agency to run your ads isn't going to fix your problems. You need to know it first so that you can speak their language and also hold them accountable to the results. So it seems like for a lot of our studio owners, there's a whole lot of stuff to learn, right? There's so much. But again, and I've talked about this before, what do? I say, let's look at your 90-day plan and what do you need to get an understanding of in these next 90 days? Because you might not be running your, ads for your new season to bring in your new students until August or September. So maybe you don't need to do that at the moment, right? That might not be in this 90 days. It might be in the next 90 days. So take that out of your brain and you don't need to think about it again until it comes up there. So we tend to get very overwhelmed though, because there is so much we could learn. There is so much we need to learn as business owners, whether you're running a studio or you're a choreographer or an artist, running yourself as a business. There is a lot that we can learn, but what in the immediacy, like what do we need to learn today, this week, these next 90 days so that we can move closer to our goals? Yeah. Then I would suggest that once you have that base understanding and knowledge, that's where you're going to have the power to delegate or outsource it. And we are in like the best time ever in business to be a business owner, solo or running a studio, because we're in like this gig economy where we can hire someone for a couple of hours to upload our emails, every month. We can jump on a call with a copywriter for 15 minutes, read them some stuff. They can turn it into a newsletter or an email and send it out. We can speak into our phone and get it transcribed on rev.com. Our office manager puts it into an email. I mean, there are so many cool gadgets and tools and softwares we can use to help automate some of these things as well. But get the base understanding first. You don't need to be an expert, like a rocket science level expert, a surgeon expert in putting together your P&L, right, your profit and loss statement. But you've got to know what a profit and loss statement looks like. You've got to know how to interpret the numbers and you've got to know what they mean, but you don't have to do the work to put it together, right? Amazing. So yeah, get that base, get that foundation level understanding. Once you've got that, then you're going to be in a really nice place to delegate it or outsource it.
Yeah. That's fantastic. If people are feeling like, yes, I want support, getting the foundations, learning the basics, being able to, probably eliminate some of the fear that comes around the new and the amount. Yeah, totally. Where can they find you?
Yeah, please come and check us out, dsoa.com, as part of our membership. We teach a lot of this stuff. We're always talking about tools and automations and trainings, and we provide a whole bunch of this base understanding of how to build and run a business to then be able to delegate and outsource parts of it. So go to dsoa.com. You can find out more about becoming a member. Find us on Facebook, find us on Instagram, Dance Studio Owners Association, and we'd really love to continue the conversation.
Yeah. And I'm just going to say, for anyone who hears the word like automations and systems and processes and sort of starts getting squirmy, because, sometimes as creatives, that sounds really like tight and rigid and complicated or whatever. When I was working at the marketing agency, I had a wonderful boss who said, in all of the 20 years he's been doing it, he always has people initially fight that sort of structure or those rules. And he goes, without a doubt, it ends up being the best, most productive, most empowering part of their job once it's actually set up and you just get used to it. There's a learning curve, but by setting yourself up in that way, you set yourself up for success. And from a person who gets squirmy at Excel spreadsheets, am so grateful that he shared that. And you know what? I should probably actually reach out and tell him that I remember that.
Yeah, send him this little snippet and say thank you.
Yeah, totally. And just express that gratitude, because it is important. It's so important for us to have that support and that guidance that you offer all the studio owners. So thank you, Clint, again for another fantastic outro.
Lauren, love you.
Love it.
Thank you so much for listening to our episode today of the Transform My Dance Studio podcast. Now, if you'd love to work with me and my team and an incredible group of studio owners from all around the globe, I want to encourage you to check out our Inner Circle program. Just go to dsoa.com/inner circle and apply today to work with us. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week. Take care and bye for now.